Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.
The National Weather Service.
And good Thursday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 10th of March. As always, we encourage you and your community to stay up to date on your local weather information, and you can do that easily by going to our website at weather.gov/Alaska. You can always find the latest forecast information on NOAA Weather Radio as well as Marine VHF, and give us a call on the weather info line at 800-472-0391. During the day, you'll find more information on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube, of course. And around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get your daily afternoon map briefing. You might hear that on Alaska Public Radio Network stations, or you can just watch it on YouTube, and you'll be able to see what we're going to talk about here in Alaska Weather with a little more detail, of course, during the show. Here's a look at the hazardous weather outlook now, and across the North Slope, a winter weather advisory is still in effect until about midnight. You'll notice we've dropped off the areas around Barrow and AKwx and southward. Winds will stay up just enough to keep blowing and drifting snow possibility, and that's obviously going to limit visibility there for a while, and it could be below 1 mile at times. Again, that's going to last until about midnight or so before we expect to see some improvement. However, the overall weather pattern doesn't really change a whole lot more in the next few days, so don't be surprised if these warnings are extended later tonight, or perhaps into the next couple days they come back. In the meantime, winter weather advisories from Wainwright southward toward Point Hope, and again, visibilities could be poor in all of those areas shaded in yellow. The high wind warnings have bing dropped now for the central Aleutians, but we have seen some stronger gusts through the afternoon, some of those reaching up past 70 miles per hour and just almost tapping the 75-mile-an-hour mark. You'll obviously see the cyclone here across the central Aleutians and across the eastern and northern Bering Sea. This great swirl of clouds is producing winds on the backside of it, those northwesterlies cutting through places like Adak and Atka earlier this afternoon, and those winds will continue to diminish as we go through the remainder of the day and tonight. In the meantime, fairly quiet weather across southeast today. We saw temps in the mid to upper 40s around places like Ketchikan and across the central and northern sections of the Panhandle. A beautiful and mostly sunny day in a few spots there, so hopefully that was a good day for you where you are. Across the upper Yukon Valley, all the way into the Copper River Basin and even parts of south central, fairly dry weather there. A few more clouds the further west you went toward Cook Inlet, and of course southwest, getting the leading edge of the new round of clouds coming off the low pressure system in the Bering. Across the interior, we saw clouds moving northward. There, not a whole lot underneath them. Very dry air is still in place, and temperatures remained about normal, if not a little bit above normal. Across the North Slope, coastal plain temperatures were cool this morning. Barrow dropped to 15 below, and that, of course, with the wind. Out across the Norton Sound region, we saw a few areas of light snow around the Seward Peninsula, and winds again were still blowing and drifting snow around the parts of the Bering Strait, with northerlies expected to continue feeding into the low pressure system across the southern Bering Sea. Here's a look at the surface map now, and you can see earlier this afternoon low pressure was down to 957 millibars. The occlusion just about to move into St. Paul and St. George on the north side of that. A little bit of snow was falling on the islands. Snow was also light on the southern side of the Alaska Peninsula, including areas around Sand Point earlier today. Out over the Gulf, a persistent low pressure system that looked a lot more interesting yesterday. Today, it's just falling apart, and more dry air is being wrapped into this. A couple days ago, though, you'll recall we did have a few lightning strikes on the eastern side of this. That has since fizzled out. Out across the southeastern part of our state, you can see some breaks in the cloud cover. We're looking at the visible satellite picture here, so not everything that we see is cloud cover, of course. If you detect something that looks a little bit like the mountains, indeed it is. That is the snow caps of the Wrangell-St. Elias Range, the Chugach, and of course the Alaska Range. And if you look really carefully underneath this trough of low pressure, you could probably find Denali. So it has been a fairly dry day. The clouds you see out across the west are being chipped away by the very strong flow of northwesterly dry air working through the central Aleutians. A little bit further north, blowing and drifting snow across the north slope there, but dry conditions for anyone pretty much running a dog or a sled a little bit further to the west at this point. Tonight's forecast shows a 965 millibar low across the western Gulf of Alaska. The inclusion moves out of the Bering and into the north and central Gulf there. You'll notice the pressure gradient tightening up a little bit more across the eastern Gulf. Pockets of light rainfall may be possible, but remember what we just saw in the satellite picture? Things are pretty dry here, so we're going to have to move a lot of moisture northward pretty quickly to get that rainfall going across northern parts of southeast. It's possible, but don't look for a huge onslaught of heavy rainfall just yet. Across the Cook Inlet region, a few more clouds will continue around the area tonight. Snow showers are possible for the lower to maybe the middle Yukon Valley around the Galena region. If you're passing through there, don't look for a whole lot, though. It looks like just passing snow showers. Most of the snow activity will be a little bit further south, if any, and snow showers will be possible up across Kaktovik and southward toward Arctic Village. But by and large, the biggest weather issue you'll have across the north tonight will be blowing and drifting snow and gusty winds across the north slope and into the Bering Strait. 994 millibar low sitting very close to Eagle will keep the wind stirred up just a little bit more. You'll notice that's really not much of a persistent weather pattern, though, as we get into Friday. Low pressure across the Gulf will be back in play. It's always in play. It has been all winter long, it seems like. At 973 millibars, the front starts to creep a little bit further east and it moves into more of a southeast to northwest orientation. That's going to move the weather pattern a little bit more in that same direction, guiding a little bit of moisture through southeast, but really start to focus on Prince William Sound to Kodiak Island for precipitation possibilities as we head into Friday and Saturday. The winds, again, going to stay up and a little bit gusty across some of the northern coast regions, probably some minimal gales as we get into Friday and Saturday there. Snow showers for the western Alaska Range as well as the Chugach and into the Wrangell-St. Elias. Some passing snow showers across the Alcan border region as well as the North Slope and the Beaufort Seacoast. But once again, watch for blowing and drifting snow is the main weather issue for the North Slope as we go into Friday and Saturday. From St. Matthew all the way down through the Pribilofs and into the eastern chain, snow showers will be possible there on the back edge of the upper level part of this storm system. For the Unalaska and Dutch Harbor region, probably talking about rain and snow showers the further north you go, though. That, of course, turns to snow. And then out to the west, snow will be possible around Kiska and Attu as we head into Friday. As we look at Saturday, the low just keeps mixing itself up and falling apart gradually and filling in to 977 millibars. There will be a better chance for rainfall to develop in this situation as we head into Saturday and even Sunday as moisture is filling in from the Pacific Northwest and gradually lifting northward. There is some drier air, though, that's being pulled in from the continent of western Canada. This will continue working westward throughout time, and as that happens, the risk of rainfall or precipitation across south central will probably start to fall apart a little bit the further and further away you go from the coastline. But right up along the coast, Prince William Sound, Resurrection Bay, Kodiak Island, you're still going to have that opportunity for wet weather as we get into Saturday and a chance for some snow showers across the Alaska Range. But once again, look how dry the Yukon Valley is, all the way out to Norton Sound and the trail running all the way up toward Nome. You'll notice pretty dry conditions there. Snow showers out across the western and central chain expected to continue as we head into Saturday. A ridge of high pressure not really strong enough to hold back that next wave, but the next wave isn't that strong to begin with anyway, so not a whole lot to write home about there. Blowing and drifting snow still continues across the north slope, so again, be prepared for more advisories there if that impacts your operations or your day. The temperature-wise today, look at that. Southeast, the place to be today. Mid to upper 40s around the Panhandle, 45 to 46 degrees or so around Ketchikan and Annette, 46 in Sitka, lower 40s for the capital city. And Haines and Skagway, also a beautiful day for you. 47 in Yakutat, about the same for our friends in Cordova today. 37 in Valdez and Anchorage, 43 in Homer, 42 in Seward and Talkeetna, 44 wonderful degrees. Hope it was a good day there. 36 around the Rainy Pass region, 25 up around Eagle. A little bit warmer there around Northway today at 29, 32 in Fairbanks, hitting 32 degrees in Fairbanks in early March. Wow, a warm day for sure. 14 In Fort Yukon, 9 in Arctic Village. Temperatures in the single digits, mainly on the sub-zero side there for Barrow, Wainwright, Prudhoe Bay. It looks like 3 above for Kaktovik earlier today. Teens for Kivalina and Kotzebue and Shishmaref at 16 degrees there. 21 for our friends gathering in Nome, 21 in Unalakleet, 26 in Galena. It looked like the sky was showing a little bit of sunshine earlier today. Occasional reports of snow. I didn't see too much falling on the web cameras there from the FAA earlier today. 23 in Grayling, 27 in McGrath, and it was 34 in Bethel. With Amonic at 21, St. Lawrence Island on the western side there in Campbell, 7 degrees. As you head out toward Lake Iliamna, temperatures were in the lower 40s. Even milder as you went out toward King Salmon and Dillingham at 41 degrees. Most of the Alaska Peninsula not only breezy, but in the mid to upper 30s. Sandpoint was 36, Cold Bay and Falls Pass in the upper 30s. St. Paul and St. George at 34, Unalaska and Dutch Harbor just shy of 40 around the 3 o'clock hour. Lower 30s for Adak and Attica. Again, a very windy day there with peak gusts in the 70 and 80 mile an hour range. 43 for Kodiak. And again, all the winds out west will be filling in and slowing down as we go through the end of the evening. So those high wind warnings have been dropped. Low temperatures tonight in the upper 30s to about 40 degrees for southeast. 31 in Cordova. You'll notice temperatures around Glen Allen down to 1 below, 22 up around Talkeetna, and mid-20s as you get into parts of Anchorage and the Cook Inlet region. Kodiak 37. Fairbanks, after a mild day today, should drop to about 13 tonight. 15 below in Barrow, 5 below for Kivalina and Kotzebue. About the same there for Shishmaref. Nome up to 9 overnight. 14 above in Unalakleet, and Galena looking at about 7 degrees. Southwestern stations will see temperatures in the teens and 20s closer to the coastline, looking at lower 30s around Bristol Bay. Nunivak Island near 23, the Alaska Peninsula and the Chain in the lower to mid 30s for overnight lows. High temperatures tomorrow there will stretch back into the mid 30s to probably lower 40s for most of the Alaska Peninsula, from Pilot Point to Port Heiden all the way down to Cold Bay and Falls Pass. Once you get into Bristol Bay, Dillingham and King Salmon should be closer to 40 degrees. Bethel about 29, and cooler there for McGrath as well. Around Norton Sound and eastward up the Yukon Valley, look for temperatures in the mid-20s. Galena looking at temperatures also about 25 degrees tomorrow. Nome 21, Shishmaref about 2. And then we get back into the sub-zero range for Barrow and the North Slope about 5 to 10 below. Don't forget about that easterly wind coming in about 20 to 25 knots. For the Middle Tanana Valley, including Fairbanks, you're back at 32 tomorrow. About the same for Eagle, South Central, and the Susitna Valley. Look at those temperatures back in the lower 40s. Should be a great day, and as far as temperatures go, should feel like a very warm day as well. 42 in Kodiak and southeast, finally in the upper 30s to mid 40s as you get down across the southern coast for Craig, Klawock, Ketchikan, and Annette, all feeling a little bit of a tease of springtime. Here's flying weather, and once again we're showing you the morning map as well as the afternoon map now. The IFR conditions are now plotted in red, and you can see those stretching along the Yukon Valley all the way out to the Pribilofs. We've got hit and miss IFR in the morning across the upper Yukon and still across the Beaufort Seacoast. Here's what it looks like by the afternoon. Some improvement up across the north. MVFR conditions across the wealth of the Bering as well as the Yukon Delta. IFR conditions just east of the Pribilofs and south of St. Matthew. Another band of IFR developing out across the western Aleutians, and then not a whole lot going on in southeast tomorrow. Looks like a pretty good day to fly for most places. We might have some IFR closing in on some of our northern passes, though, in southeast. We'll check those. Anaktuvuk Pass starting there at MVFR and probably holding through most of the day. We don't expect a whole lot of difference there for Adigan Pass tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions throughout your Friday. Rainy Pass, marginal throughout most of the day. Windy Pass right now is looking to be A-OK. VFR there, and to start for Isabel Pass with a shift over toward MVFR conditions throughout your Friday. Then Tasta Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions developing for Friday afternoon. Tanita Pass right now looks pretty good at VFR, and Portage Pass looks to lean over toward IFR conditions. Chilkoot and White Pass, like I said, we could see a little bit of a shift throughout the day. Mainly on Chilkoot Pass, we would have a better chance of at least encroaching on IFR conditions there. So plan accordingly and watch the weather. Freezing levels show that cold air now is advancing southward through the central chain following the next storm. And out across the eastern Gulf, the warm air aloft is lifting northward once again. The 2,000-foot freezing line hovering over southeast and just about to reach the Kenai Peninsula. Icing potential shows isolated to maybe isolated moderate across the north slope. No surprise there with the weather. Above 1,000 feet would be your best shot for that. St. Matthew Island down toward the eastern chain above 3,000 feet. There's a chance for some occasional moderate in that area, as well as ahead of the next wave of low pressure that will push more moisture into the Kenai Peninsula and especially around Shelikof Strait. Again, most of that will be above 4,000 feet as well. Our jet stream shows low pressure is flattening out a little bit out across the North Pacific. This superhighway of weather has speeds around 150 to 165 knots for your Friday, and a little bit of a northward bend now across the lower 48 states, allowing a little bit more warmth to spread northward, and watch for that to crash across the eastern seaboard. High pressure, though, still in control of the mainland of Alaska. Low pressure up across the north slope, guiding southerlies gently off the north coast, 15 to 20 knots there. Low pressure is moving into the Gulf and stirring up more of an east and southeasterly flow at 30 to 40 knots around the coastal areas, and a northwesterly flow a little bit stronger south of the chain, but still going across the southern Bering at 25 to 30 knots. At 3,000 feet, a little bit of a different pattern, but not so much. 40 to 45 knots there across the open waters of the Gulf, and slowing down a little bit across the coastal areas of southeast, 30 knots there. Gentle southerlies working over the Alaska range, about 10 knots, and then picking up as they bend quickly off to the west. 30 knots coming over the Chukchi seacoast and then dropping sharply southward toward the central and eastern chain, 30 to 35 knots again across the central chain as we look at 3,000 feet. Turbulence potential then will really focus on most areas around Prince William Sound to Kodiak Island, around the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. That's where those northwesterly winds are really going to be pulled in. Not really so much of the surface as we go through the next couple days, but aloft. If you're flying anything off the ground, of course, you're probably going to find a few of those breezy gap areas there in the Alaska Peninsula. Below 4,000 feet will be your best chance for that. An occasional moderate should be expected. From Shelikof Strait to Kodiak Island, probably some bumpy conditions there from time to time. And around the Brooks Range, with the pressure gradient tightening up a little bit more in the north, watch for some chop there, especially below 5,000 feet. For southeast, hit and miss, a few bumps from time to time, a better chance around the Dixon entrance below 4,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with the rest of your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
Four corner stars of Orion the Hunter.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm James Albury of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida.
And I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. Almost everyone knows that the most famous star pattern of winter is Orion the Hunter.
And although everyone loves his red shoulder star Betelgeuse, Orion's other three bright stars are also quite wonderful. Well, let's show you. Okay. We've got our skies set up for any clear night this week at around 8 p.m. And if you look south-southwest, you'll see Orion in all his glory. The dead giveaway is the three stars equally spaced in a row which mark his belt. Above the belt are the two bright stars which mark his shoulders, and below are the two bright stars which mark his foot and knee. These four stars make a large rectangle, and the first corner star we'll look at is Betelgeuse.
The name Betelgeuse may come from an Arabic word which means armpit of the central one, and is correctly pronounced Betelgeuse, but most people pronounce it Betelgeuse, so they can remember it because if you stepped on a beetle, you'd get red Betelgeuse. At least that's what astronomers have been telling kids for years.
At any rate, Betelgeuse is a gigantic red variable star. When it contracts to its smallest size, it's 550 times as wide as our million-mile-wide sun. But when it expands to its largest size, it is almost 1,200 times as wide. And its red color indicates that it is a much cooler star than our yellow sun.
Orion's other shoulder star is named Bellatrix, and although it is much smaller than Betelgeuse, it's still 7 times as wide as our sun. And it is a deep blue color, which means that it's many, many times hotter than both red Betelgeuse and our yellow sun.
Orion's left foot is blue-white supergiant named Rigel, and it's much larger than Bellatrix, also 92 times as wide as our sun. His other foot star, named Saiph, is blue in color, and although it's a lot smaller than Rigel, Saiph is likewise a supergiant with a diameter 21 times that of our sun.
Man, our sun looks puny next to any of Orion's four corner stars.
Astronomers are constantly refining the distance to the stars, but Orion's big four are all hundreds of light years away, which means that when we look at them, we see them not as they exist now, but as they existed sometime in the past, depending on how far away they are.
For instance, when we look at Bellatrix, we see it as it existed 243 years ago, because it is 243 light years away, and it takes that long for its light to reach us.
We see Betelgeuse as it existed 642 years ago because it is 642 light years away. But as far away as his shoulder stars are, his leg stars are much, much farther.
Exactly. Rigel is 773 light years away and Saiph is 650 light years away. Wow. All right, let's look at something a bit closer to home. Okay, we've moved forward in time to Sunday, March 13th at 9 p.m. facing southwest. The moon will be passing through Orion's neighborhood in the coming nights.
Exactly. On the night of the 13th, the waxing crescent moon will be nearer the eye of Taurus the Bull, a star called Aldebaran. But the moon will move closer to Orion's head on the night of March 14th.
The stars move too, and really, really fast, but they are so far away you can't detect a change even over a lifetime. But the moon is only about 240,000 miles away.
Only 240,000 miles away.
So we can see it move about 13 degrees across the sky each night. Here's where the moon will be on March 15th, above Orion's head and not too far from Betelgeuse. So there you have it, the four corner stars of Orion the Hunter, each one much larger than our own sun.
And all hundreds of light years away. Look for Betelgeuse, Bellatrix, Rigel, and Saiph this week.
And don't forget to look for the moon around Orion on March 13th, 14th, and 15th. There's always lots to see and do when you
Keep looking up.
Did you notice that he never said Betelgeuse, Betelgeuse? I'm not going to say it. Don't need to see Michael Keaton anytime soon. Here's a look at today's sea ice edge. And just south of Nunivak Island and north of St. Paul, really not much in the way of change at all. This is pretty much the same map we looked at yesterday. Very low concentrations and thin ice inside of Bristol Bay and north of Cape Newingham, and then all the way south of Macoriuk and Nunivak Island. Pretty rough ice there all the way out towards St. Matthew, and this is St. Matthew right about here. So everything along the coast right now, including even areas up around Barrow and the North Slope, ice is not all that thick at this point. You can check it out yourself. Go to the new map on the Sea Ice Desk page. Go to weather.gov/acreage/ice.php. And when you click on the different map options, there's a couple radio buttons on the web. You've seen those before, just the circle. Click on the different circles there, and you can get different maps on a Google Earth map. Drive it around there, click on them and see what they do, and you can check on the different concentrations that are around Nunivak Island and St. Matthew and up around Barrow or in Kotzebue Sound, and you can see the parts of Alaska that are important to you. Here's a look at southeast now as we look at the marine forecast. Light winds inland canal tomorrow, northerlies at 10 knots with a 4-foot sea. Southeasterlies a little bit stronger down the inner channels at 20 to 25 around Petersburg, 5-foot seas there, 4 to 7-foot seas closer to the Dixon entrance outside on the outer coast. 20 knots up across the Icy Cape region southward toward Gustavus, and then we get into 35-knot winds from the south and east with 14-foot seas there for Friday. For Saturday, a little bit of a shift, more of an offshore wind blowing from Yakutat down to Cross Sound, 20 knots there with a 14-foot sea, and the northerlies kick back into the Lynn Canal. It wouldn't be a weekend without them. 30 knots with a 6-foot sea. And 25 knots a little bit further south of Juneau with a 5-foot sea there. 20 knots inside of Clarence Strait with a 4 to 8-foot sea, and southeasterlies along the outer coast at 30 knots south of Sitka. For Friday, look for easterlies inside of Prince William Sound at 25 knots with a east and southeasterly flow across the north and western Gulf. Could be some stronger, just very minimum gales there briefly on Friday before they die out. Look for 10 to 11-foot seas there in the north and 15-foot seas as you approach Kodiak Island. North and easterly winds will start around 25 knots in northern Cook Inlet and then ramp up to 40 knots west of the Barrens and then diminish to about 35 knots as you move into Chillicothe Strait with a 13-foot sea. Look for winds to diminish in all areas there on Saturday. For northern Cook Inlet, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. West of the Barrens down to 25 knots and Chillicothe Strait down to 25. Northerlies in Prince William Sound at 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. As we look at the Alaska Peninsula on Friday, northeasterlies inside of Bristol Bay at 25 knots, down the coast 30 knots there with an 11-foot sea on the Bering Sea coast side of the peninsula. North and easterly winds Coming down the Pacific coast from Castle Cape all the way down toward Falls Pass, 30 knots with a 17 to 19-foot sea. For Saturday, northeasterlies inside of Bristol Bay with a 4-foot sea, 9 to 10-foot seas on the Pacific coast side, 20 to 25-knot winds again, still from the north and east. For the Aleutians, look for the central and eastern chain to see slower winds, not as much of a big gusty kind of day as you saw today. 35 to 45 knots in all areas with the strongest winds between Atka and Nikolsky tomorrow, and seas there could reach up to 25 feet. Out across the west, already signs of change. A northeasterly flow from Adak to Kiska with a 12-foot sea, and southeasterlies up to 20 knots from Kiska to Attu with an 11-foot sea there around Shemya. On Saturday, the flow reverses course to a northwesterly flow there, 30 knots with an 11-foot sea, and you can see things kind of taking shape here across the central and eastern chain. Southwesterlies west of Adak, and then for Atka to Nikolsky, the winds become a little more northwesterly, still following low pressure out in the Gulf, 25 to 30 knots for the central and eastern chain. For the west coast, northerlies generally around 20 to 30 knots, north winds over St. Lawrence Island, St. Matthew with an 8-foot sea in the open water areas, 25 knots from the north and east around the Pribilofs, and outside of Kuskokwim Bay, winds could come up to 30 knots with an 8-foot sea. 5-foot seas there on Saturday. Northerlies should be generally lighter around Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island, and 25 knots continue around St. Paul and St. George with an 8-foot sea there on Saturday. For the North Slope, northeasterlies for Friday and for Saturday, 20 to 30 knots in all areas there around Kotzebue Sound up to Point Barrow, and for Kaktovik, that will keep snow blowing around. Winds diminished a little bit in the Beaufort Seacoast on Saturday. Not much of a change elsewhere around the Chukchi Seacoast at all. 20 to 30 from the northeast as we head into the weekend. Here's a quick recap of your weather tonight around all of Alaska. Some pockets of precipitation for the north and western Gulf. The strongest weather, though, will be out across the central and eastern Aleutians. High wind warnings have been dropped, but it will still be a blustery evening as those winds slowly ramp downward tonight. The best chance of precipitation around the north and western Gulf, and with snow showers across the central and eastern chain. Blowing and drifting snow still possible for the North Slope. Winter weather advisories continue for most areas there, and we'll probably be back this weekend. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Support comes from the University of Alaska College Savings Plan, helping you and your child save for college every step of the way, from diapers to diploma. More information at uacollegesavings.com.